You click this story because you want to know what it feels like to wake up in a different year every single night, and I'm going to tell you exactly how it began. I didn't plan for any of it, and I didn't do anything special to cause it. Yet somehow time chose me like I was part of a game I didn't understand. This story is real to me in every way, and the way it changed my life still feels impossible to explain. But I'll tell you everything, from the first night it happened to the moment I realized it wasn't random at all. It started on a quiet evening in my apartment when I was struggling to sleep after a stressful day at work. The clock read 2:17 a.m., and I closed my eyes just hoping to rest for a few hours before morning. When I opened them again, sunlight was shining through a window that wasn't mine, and the sound of birds I had never heard before echoed outside. My heart jumped because I knew immediately that something was wrong. I sat up slowly, noticing the room looked old-fashioned, with wooden walls and faded curtains that belonged in a house from decades earlier. I woke to the window and saw a small town street lined with vintage cars, people dressed in simple clothing, and a gas station sign showing prices that made no sense for today. A newspaper boy passed by on his bicycle, tossing rolled papers to each doorstep with impressive accuracy. I ran to one of them, unrolled it, and felt my stomach twist as I read the date, June 14th, 1962. I didn't know how I had gotten there, but panic hit me the moment a woman stepped outside and waved at me like she recognized me. She called me by a name that wasn't mine, and I froze because I didn't know whether to answer or run. I backed away slowly and slipped inside the house before she could ask anything else. The moment I shut the door, the inside of the room shimmered, and darkness washed over me like a wave. When I opened my eyes, I was back in my own bed, breathing hard and drenched in sweat. I checked my phone, and the date was normal, matching the day before. I tried to convince myself it was a dream, but it felt too real, too detailed, too specific to be imagination. And I didn't know it then, but that was only the beginning. The next night, I fell asleep early because exhaustion took over my body. When I woke up, I wasn't in the 1960s. And I wasn't in my own time either. I was lying on the floor of a concrete bunker with alarms blaring overhead. People in military uniforms were shouting orders while screens flashed warnings in bold red letters. I asked someone what year it was, and he gave me a confused look before shouting, "It's 2041, sir, now move." I didn't know who he thought I was, but the urgency in his voice made my legs move before my brain caught up. Soldiers rushed past me as the bunker shook, dust falling from the ceiling like rain. A commander pointed toward the exit and told me to evacuate with the others, yelling something about an incoming impact. I didn't stop to ask questions because fear took over every part of me. Once we reached the surface, my breath caught at the side of the sky glowing orange like it was on fire. Something massive streaked downward in the distance, and the ground trembled under our feet like a giant was walking across the earth. Someone grabbed my arm, pulling me toward a transport vehicle just as a blinding flash swallowed everything. And again, the world dissolved into darkness. I woke up in my bed with the same jolt of fear shooting through my chest, and I realized this was no dream. I tried to stay awake the next night by drinking coffee, splashing water on my face, and watching movies to keep myself conscious. But sometime after 5 a.m., my eyes closed for just a moment. When they opened, I was somewhere else entirely. This time I was outside, standing in a snowy forest while the air burned cold against my skin. A small wooden cabin stood a few feet away, smoke drifting from its chimney into the early morning sky. A man opened the cabin door and stared at me with disbelief, whispering, "You finally came." His voice shook like he had been waiting for this moment his whole life. I asked him who he was, and he invited me inside, offering warmth and tea like we were old friends. He said his name was Elias, and he claimed he had met me before, many years ago, yet from his point of view it had been only yesterday. He told me something impossible, that I had visited him before in his timeline, but in mine, this was the first time meeting him. He said I told him I was searching for the truth behind my condition. I didn't know how to respond, but he continued like he had rehearsed this conversation for years. He said time wasn't a straight line, and some people were unstuck, drifting night after night through different years like their body followed sleep, but their soul followed something else. I asked him why I was one of those people, and he admitted he didn't know, only that my earlier self told him it wasn't random. Then he said something that chilled me more than the winter air ever could. He said I warned him that one day I would disappear entirely, not waking up in any year at all. He said I asked him to give future me a message. "You're not lost, you're being guided." Before I could question him more, The air around me shimmered like heat rising from asphalt, and my vision darkened. Elias's voice faded into the cold as I slipped back into nothingness again. When I woke in my bed, the message stayed in my mind like a heavy shadow. I didn't want to believe any of it, but every night brought a new year, a new place, a new version of the world. Some were peaceful, with quiet mornings and simple lives. Others were futuristic cities filled with hovering trains, clean metal towers, and artificial skies that changed colors like digital paintings. But not all years were advanced or calm. Some were broken and quiet, with empty streets and burned-out buildings telling stories of wars that hadn't happened yet. In one future year, I walked through a city where vines grew through skyscrapers and the silence felt heavier than any noise. I found a digital tablet lying on the ground with a single message glowing on the screen. It said, "You keep returning, even after everything ends." I realized something terrifying that night: some of these futures might be because of choices made in the years before them. And if I was being guided, then someone or something wanted me to see all of this for a reason. I needed answers, not just glimpses. So one night I tried something new. Before falling asleep, I repeated a thought over and over in my mind. Take me to the year where this began. I didn't know if that would work, but when I opened my eyes, I was standing in a large laboratory filled with technology far beyond anything in my time. Screens floated in the air, showing streams of data I couldn't understand. A woman in a white coat turned toward me and whispered in shock. It worked. I asked her where I was, and her answer shot through me like electricity. She said I was in the year 2089 in a research facility dedicated to studying time displacement disorders. She told me they had been tracking me across decades, watching me appear in different years one by one, like pieces of a scattered puzzle. Then she said something I'll never forget. She said my condition started because of an experiment I had not yet conducted in my present day. According to their records, I would one day attempt to measure how dreams affect the brain's perception of time. But a malfunction in the device would cause my consciousness to disconnect from my original timeline. She said my body never left my own year, but my awareness had begun traveling every night. I asked her if I could stop it, desperate for some kind of fix. She took a deep breath and told me they believed I could anchor myself again, but it required finding the exact moment where the loop began. She said only one person knew that moment clearly: me, but from another timeline. I asked how to find him, and she pointed to a door glowing with soft blue light. She told me he was waiting for me on the other side. I walked toward the door, feeling a mix of fear and hope twisting inside me. When I stepped through, I found myself standing across from a man who looked like an older version of me, with tired eyes and quiet understanding. He smiled sadly and said he had been waiting for this meeting since the day he became unstuck. He told me the truth I hadn't been ready to hear. He said the nightly jumps were guiding me toward a single purpose: to prevent the final future year he had seen, the one where humanity no longer survived. He said every year I visited was a clue, a piece of information I would one day use to change history before it was too late. Then he placed a small device in my hand, shaped like a silver coin with symbols engraved around its edge. He told me that when I returned to my own time, I would know what to do with it. He warned me that when I finally anchored myself, I would stop jumping, but the world would start changing based on my actions. Then he said the last words he ever would to me: "Don't be afraid when you wake up tomorrow." Before I could respond, darkness swept over me again. This time when I opened my eyes, I was in my own bed, breathing carefully, testing the air like it might vanish. My phone showed the correct dates, and everything looked normal, yet the silver device from the future sat in my hand. I realized the nightly jumps had stopped at last. But anchoring myself meant the timeline ahead could shift in ways I couldn't predict. And as I looked out my window, I noticed something small but impossible: a new building that wasn't there yesterday. If you want more stories like this, subscribe to Time Traveling Stories, where we explore what lies behind the mysteries of time. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next story if the future allows it.